Jim Cornette has said it, and it's absolutely true. Absolutely true. The UFC does pro wrestling better than pro wrestling does pro wrestling. UFC is the best pro wrestling out there in the marketplace today because it's largely true. Whereas traditional professional wrestling has largely lost its way, the UFC, Dana White, understand a lot of the basic premises and concepts after ripping them off from Vince McMahon and so many others, and have incorporated them into their business model. When you look back a few months ago, what happened with Conor McGregor and the wrecking of the bus, like there are people that actually think that was 100% a shoot. They think that was 100% real. So it kind of speaks to the lack of intelligence and sophistication of sports fans out there. I mean, just imagine thinking that that was actually legit. If that was that legit, Conor McGregor would really be in prison current state, and he would never fight for UFC again. Oh, wait, he's not locked up, and he just got done fighting Khabib and getting choked the fuck out in the 4th round at UFC 229 last night. Gee, I wonder who would have thought that could have ever happened. But as you look to the buildup of this UFC 229 event, people cared. It was the first time for McGregor in an octagon in almost 2 years, going up against a champion in Khabib who's undefeated and a freaking monster. What's going to happen? It's a good thing this type of stuff doesn't happen in pro wrestling because pro wrestling would find a way to screw it up. So ultimately, the fight happens Saturday night, and Khabib wins, to the surprise of many, but perhaps not all. He wins. He beat Conor's ass, period. No matter what you want to say, he beat the dude down. He won. That's all that matters. But of course, all the discussion and all the talk after what was supposedly a great card is what happened after the fight, where Khabib is climbing over the octagon to get to Conor McGregor's camp. McGregor's punching at Khabib's camp through the thing. They're coming in and they're sucker punching them, and all types of pandemonium and hell breaks loose, where you're announcing the winner of the fight, the decision, and nobody's in the damn octagon. And of course, predictably, you've got a ton of UFC and sports fans and all the varied sports media talking about how bad this is and what a horrible look this is and what a shame this is and what a way to sully such a great fight and a great night and blah, 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 and all this other bullshit that just simply isn't true. What happened with Khabib and Conor at 229, and especially the aftermath, is what you call booking the return match, or booking, in this case, the return fight. Because if Khabib just beats Conor and that's it, there's not necessarily automatically a reason for a rematch. Khabib has beat him. He was the champion. He stays the champion. From a professional wrestling standpoint, and you've got to look at it from this lens, even though a lot of you want to be, oh, I go to the dojo, I'm UFC tough guy now, or look at my Brazilian hits and kicks and all this other crap. Ah, shut the fuck up. You're either disenfranchised boxing fans or disappointed and lost wrestling fans that gravitated to the UFC, and that's a fact, Jack. When you look at this from a professional wrestling lens, the only way that you could ensure that you had justification and real reason for a return fight, and on top of that, perhaps even more interest in a return fight, even though the decision here was kind of decisive, because Khabib ultimately choked dude out, is to do exactly what the hell happened. Now, I could sit there and talk about how ridiculously naive it would be to think that this was 100% shoot, that Khabib didn't have something planned afterwards. Keep in mind the concept of guys can work themselves into a shoot. You can plan to do something, and then it goes awry and you lose control. Kind of similar to what happened with Conor and the bus several months back. But when you think about it, and you really think about it, what was so bad about this for UFC? Oh, people in the crowd might have gotten hurt. Oh, boo fucking who. They'd had a couple of frivolous lawsuits that would have settled. and in the process made massive amounts of money more back in return, many-fold over for that freaking return fight down the road. So would you do it? Well, ding dong, dumb dicks, you're damn right you would if you had any business sense whatsoever. And clearly Dana White has business sense. He knows where the money's at. That's why Conor's not in a jail cell. Because that was all work. That was all bullshit. And as far as this goes, no matter what, you best damn believe the UFC and Dana White are going to perfectly position themselves to maximize the opportunity and capitalize off of this. The only mistake that comes out of this and what happened is not that it's suddenly a great fight and a great night and all this idiotic lame crap. It's the fact that it happened during the heart of the NFL season. And no matter how many millions of people have tuned out the NFL for one reason or the other, there is still no questioning that the NFL reigns supreme as the sport of sports in the American landscape. It is the king by far. The better thing would have been to have done this 3 months ago during the summer where you weren't competing head-to-head against the NFL. Then come Monday morning as you hit the sports talk show circuit and you hit the mainstream news circuit, this is the lead. This is the primary story, the dominant storyline that everybody's talking about. But other than that, you're still going to have people talking about it Monday. It's just going to kind of get buried in the fold a little bit when talking about the NFL. What the hell is so bad about what happened here? You've got people talking about this 24 hours close to it after what happened. And when you're a company like the UFC and you're somebody like Dana White, it's kind of that old philosophy from Eric Bischoff that controversy creates cash, or the Vince McMahon philosophy, and you'll notice I'm bringing up wrestling people here, that any publicity can potentially be good to great publicity, especially if it's free and you can capitalize the fuck out of it. Well, what the hell do you think Dana White's going to do? What the hell do you think UFC is positioning themselves to do? You've given yourself vastly more reasons for a return fight. And not only a return fight, but a return fight that is probably going to interest people even more than the original. On top of all of that, when you look at the divided political climate in this country, no matter where you fall, left, right, somewhere in between, this whole thing between Khabib and Conor encapsulates things such as nationalism, such as religion, such as family, such as racism, national origin. So many of these elements that are front and center in the American political and societal climate today are encapsulated in this fight between two non-American dudes. Funny how that works, but it is something that you could tie into what is going on in the mainstream. Just like when wrestling was at its best, that's what it did. The 80s, at the tail end of the Cold War, was all about patriotism and red, white, and blue awesome. And you had Hulk Hogan and you had these Hacksaw Jim Duggan and these kind of heroic American, all-American good guy type of things. But you also had cartoons and you had these larger-than-life characters that were cartoons in and of themselves. And then the 90s, you got into goth and you had Taker and so forth. But you also got to where gangsta rap became a really big thing. And all of a sudden here comes all these big-time factions going past the Four Horsemen, going to the NWO, D-Generation X. You had the mid-90s, the Nation of Islam, Louis Farrakhan. They were getting a lot of attention. Here's the Nation of Domination. When you can take what's going on in pop culture in the real world and incorporate it into what you're doing, it is much more likely to succeed. And when you look at Conor and Khabib and potentially the rematch, Conor and his race baiting and stuff, Khabib being who he is, it encapsulates a lot of that to where you can have clear dynamics of certain people are going to root for one guy no matter what, and certain people are going to root for one guy no matter what, but a lot of people are going to be interested here. All these people, all these old school sports media heads, and even the UFC people that should fucking know better, that are sitting there talking about how this is a disgrace and talking about how bad of a look this is. My ass. This is a great look for UFC, and it is a massive business opportunity for them, and they damn well know it, and they're going to capitalize on it. It is time for people to get over their fuddy-duddy ways. It is time for people to get over their own bullshit and their own stupidity and their own naiveness and understand the bigger picture at play. The UFC is professional wrestling. It is the best professional wrestling today. As a result, they're going to do things that stir the pot, that shake shit up, that are controversial. Just like good professional wrestling used to do. So no, this isn't a bad thing. It's not a stain or a black eye or a dark spot in the UFC's history. It is an opportunity ripe for potential for profit. And anybody that thinks otherwise is a moron.